Hello, everyone, and welcome. When we look at the paranormal, we oftentimes look for some of the most terrifying places in all of America. Sarah,
Yes.
how about tonight if we take a trip and tell people about one of Time Magazine's top 10 most haunted houses in America?
Okay.
Sounds pretty appropriate for time of year.
Yep.
Here we go.
You're recording, right?
Yeah.
There was definitely a man talking out here. We are a group of investigators.
And I didn't even turn it on,
Skeptics.
FYI, and it's on again in the middle of nowhere.
And one that's a bit empathic.
I think that I'm too empathic, that the room was upset that we were ghost hunting.
Join us on our adventures of diagnosing the mysteries of the paranormal. Hello, everyone, and welcome in. Tonight we're going to call this Paranormal Consult. How do you feel about that?
Sure.
You know, it's a doctor thing. Call it a consult. I don't know. It's my lovely wife, Sarah. I'm Chad. We're Dr. Ghost Hunters. And tonight, we're going to do something a little bit different. Sarah and I took a trip. And we took a trip to the Winchester Mystery Mansion.
House.
Well, it's mansion house. Same thing. But it really got us thinking about the paranormal, about all the mysteries that lie within the house. And we're going to tell everyone about that. And something that I'm pretty certain are going to shock a lot of people out there. But before we get to that, we want to remind people who might be new here with Dr. Ghost Hunters to go subscribe to us on YouTube. We do paranormal investigations. Jason, my buddy who is not here tonight, we are physicians turned ghost hunters, and we try to turn the scientific aspect of our day jobs into paranormal investigating. We have Sarah here for the brains and the looks, and our friends to join along to bring a little bit of entertainment into the paranormal. So after you see this, please be sure to check out our other episodes. We are also available to people on Instagram, Dr. Ghost Hunters, TikTok. For some reason, we're like Ghost Hunter 1, Dr. Ghost Hunter 1. I think I screwed that up when I created the name. But we also have a website, drghosthunter.com, where you can buy merchandise, see some of our best evidence. Despite what Jamie tells you, it is in fact paranormal evidence. And what else? We have an email as well if people want to reach us at drghosthunterslc@gmail.com.
And a phone number.
And a phone number. That's right. You created a voicemail that people should go listen to. And if they have anything that they want to call and tell us, or a location that we should go investigate, you can give us a call and leave a voicemail. Now, don't worry if you're shy. It's going to go to voicemail. 1-844-GHOST-44. It's 844-GHOST-44. And I encourage you to go call it right now. Think back to Ghostbusters as you're dialing the number, and you're going to get a little smile on your face, I think, when you listen to Sarah. That sound about right?
Sure.
You're going to speak up into that mic, dear.
Okay.
So, all right, let's talk about the Winchester Mystery House. Now, I teased this briefly, but you and I took a little vacation. We went to San Jose to go visit our niece, your sister, and run the Rock and Roll Half Marathon.
Yes.
Lovely time.
Yes.
Although in the middle of a heat wave, which was not so much fun.
Right.
But doing this during October, I started looking around for things to do outside of the race and came across the Winchester House.
Which we've been to before.
Now, we have been there once before. We went with some friends. We took a daytime tour.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that a little bit later. But we wanted to do the daytime tour again with our niece and take her there and let her experience.
She likes ghosts.
This very spooky, eerie, and mysterious famous house.
Yes.
In addition, we found out that during Halloween time that they have Unhinged, where the house at night gets transformed. All of a sudden, they have a bar that has spooky cocktails. They have delicious treats. They have tarot card readers. They played, I think, some scary films on the outside. They projected on the side of the house. We didn't see them, but they advertised them.
Okay.
And then they had a haunted attraction inside the house as well.
Yeah, it was like a haunted house walkthrough.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I guess I wasn't clear on what we were going to. I thought it was going to be like a murder mystery or like a show. Yeah. We've done one of those before.
Right. So a little bit different. Something I think you and I did a lot when we were dating, and we haven't done so as much lately. But I still had a great time doing it.
Oh no, it was fun. I wasn't entirely clear because you showed me the trailer and I wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, so if you go onto their website, which Sarah's referring to, winchestermysteryhouse.com, you can click on this immersive Halloween tour called
Mhm.
Unhinged, and they just have a video that explains none of it,
Right.
but it kind of gives you the backstory for what they are portraying in this
Mhm.
haunted attraction.
Which going through the attraction explains or furthers the story in no way at all.
I would agree, but it is a good time nonetheless, and you should go check it out.
Mhm.
So we want to talk a little bit in this episode about the lore behind the house.
Yeah.
And really, it was the tour that we had,
Mhm.
some of the mysteries of the tour, the mysteries of the home that got us to do some thinking and you to do some research and really spark some conversation.
Yeah.
And we're going to deliver some information to people here today.
Well, and so if I can further that thought, I think we went to the tour in like 2013
Yes.
with some friends. We were visiting the area and we didn't really know a whole lot about it. So the tour was first time we're hearing all the stories. And we got to the end of the tour where they talk about the safe and opening the safe and what was inside of it. I don't want to give anything away for people who don't know.
Yes.
But it was kind of this like moment towards the end of the tour where you realize that what they're telling may not be entirely factual about Sarah. And then going into the tour 11 years later with that thought in mind and scrutinizing everything that was said, I think caused me to want to look into it.
Right. That's a perfect tease. But before we get into what you found, let's tell people about this creepy place.
Right.
So some of the lore behind the Winchester Mystery House. Now, if you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to go pull it up as you're listening to this.
Sure.
WinchesterMysteryHouse.com. Of course, it is everywhere. If you've been living under a rock, you may not have heard of it. All of the major paranormal investigative shows, with the exception of ours, of course, have been there. So Ghost Adventures has been there. Destination Fear has been there. And even BuzzFeed, Shane and Ryan have been there.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course,
they're not BuzzFeed anymore.
No, they're now Watcher.
Watcher.
Of course, to go investigate one of the top 10 most haunted houses in America.
Mm-hmm.
So this house has a crazy maze structure to it.
Right.
This is truly a mansion. Now, we call it a house, but it is a mansion.
Right.
There are rooms everywhere. Now, the lore behind Sarah. Do you want to talk a little bit about her bad luck and why she was building this house?
Yeah. Well, what they say.
What they say.
Sarah was purportedly told by a medium in New Haven, which is where she lived with her husband and the baby that died at 40 days old.
Oh, her husband, the originator of the Winchester.
No, that was his father.
Very
that was
good.
his father. Okay. So she was told that her bad luck of losing her husband and her only child was due to haunting of the spirits of those killed by the Winchester rifle. Her husband was William Wirt Winchester. His father was the owner of the company. However, in a 7-month time span, his father, he did, and his mother all passed away.
Oh.
So William died of tuberculosis. I don't recall off the top of my head what her in-laws died of, but he was 40 years old. Sarah and him never had a living child. And so she also was diagnosed and had a sibling who also had this, and I'm unclear, she may have passed away from it, rheumatoid arthritis. So she's told to get away from these spirits and this bad luck, you have to go out west and build a house and keep building and never stop.
And she does.
And she does. Yeah. So she purchases a house. It's I believe 8-bedroom ranch at the time in Santa Clara Valley, which is now known as San Jose. There are stairs leading into the ceilings, doors that open to 3-story fall, windows into interior rooms, and skylights in the floor.
Now, hold on, pause for a second.
Mm-hmm.
That is wild.
Yeah.
We designed our house.
Yes, we did.
We did not design our house to look like that.
Well, we had an architect design our house. And then,
but why did she do this?
Supposedly, the architects of the home were spirits. So she was holding seances, talking to spirits, and they were telling her every night what she would be doing next. And so she had to keep building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to stop the spirits from finding her. She would hold seances every night from midnight to 2 a.m. And the ghosts told her how to build and where.
On the tour, we did see the seance room.
Yes.
And one of the creepier rooms on the tour, as presented by the tour guide, because it is a room that once she could get into, she could not exit the same way.
One entrance, two exits. Yeah.
And when she began her seance at midnight every night, she would ring a bell that could be heard throughout the entire property.
Yeah.
And then would ring it again.
Well, there was a bell tower on the property.
When she left at 2 or 3 a.m.
2 a.m.
I remember 3 a.m., but 2 a.m. is
2 a.m.
also been seen. So these seances every night.
For 2 hours. Yeah. Supposedly.
Exactly.
Right.
Now, she kept building. And the story goes that
for 38 years. It even says on the
38
Winchester
years.
website. So she bought the house in like 1860 something. I probably should have put that further up in my notes.
That's fine.
But she bought the house in the 1860s and continued building until her death in 1922 is what they say.
So,
The math is
so everything we're going to say, so that we don't have to keep saying this, everything we're saying right now is lore.
Yes. No,
Okay?
this is what is told at the tour.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can leave it at that.
Sure.
Not only did she continuously build the staircases that led to nowhere, there's this open door on the second floor that if you're not paying attention, you walk out and you fall 20 feet towards injury. And all of this to get away from the spirits. But not only that, but inside the home, the number 13 appears in so many places.
Yeah. So supposedly she either had a fascination with or belief that the number 13 would protect her. And so there was a repetition of the number 13 within the mansion. There were 13 bathrooms, a staircase that has 13 stairs, 13 overflow holes in a wash basin, 13 hooks in the seance room, and 13 palm trees lining the driveway. And there's even 13 light globes on the living room chandelier.
It's a lot of 13.
Yeah.
And it fits. The number 13 thought to hold some paranormal value. It fits with the seances. It fits with her evading these spirits.
Ghosts, yeah.
Very interesting. So she continues to build this home, holding seances.
Oh, and sleeping in a different bedroom every night.
That's right.
That's another thing that they say on the tour.
There's also some areas inside the home and right up by the seance room, I believe on the second floor, there's an odd window that can look down into the kitchen where she could watch her servants.
That's what previous tour guide said, the one in 2013, but not the one that we had most recently. Right. No, I'm just saying that, maybe in 11 years they've stopped saying that story. I don't know. Or it's just a different tour guide.
Just a different tour guide. So all of this building continues until 1906.
Yeah. So in 1906, there was the famous San Francisco earthquake. San Jose is about 30 minutes. I don't know what the mileage is away. Yeah. And so the story, they take you into a special room on the tour and they have like a sound machine that plays the sound of an earthquake, supposedly. Yeah. And they have pictures of the house prior to the earthquake. So what the story is that Sarah was sleeping in one of her many bedrooms and was awoken during the earthquake. She was trapped in the room and it took several hours to find Sarah due to the staff not knowing where Sarah slept as she used a different room each night. Proof is given that the door jamb has damage from the crowbar used to free her. And Sarah took the earthquake as a sign that she needed to stop working on that part of the home. And supposedly there is a segment of the house that they don't clearly define that was sealed up and work on that was halted. Right. But just that specific area is what is said.
Right. So shortly after that, she takes a short hiatus away from the home. They restructure it. They get it livable for her. And she gets right back in there and keeps building until she dies.
Yeah. They said that she was living on a houseboat.
Right.
That she had nearby.
Now those, you may wonder about the sound in the background. We do have our dogs trained to be paranormal investigators. And we've taught them that every time that they hear a ghost or a spirit, they are to bark. So there they are, Max and Penny. So the earthquake forces her out. She comes back in and
Year later.
finishes until the day she dies.
So she
Now-
died in 1922. So that's like, I'm not great at math. 16 years?
Oh, you put yourself in this position. You better finish that.
16 years?
There you go.
Okay.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
So many workers on the property.
Mhm.
It is no wonder that with Sarah's wild mind, all of the workers in the home, all of that energy of evading her entire life from these spirits,
Mhm.
it is without a doubt the easiest explanation as to why this is one of America's top 10 most haunted houses, as declared by the Winchester Mystery House website.
Mhm.
They state that Time Magazine listed their house there.
Yeah.
So we go on this tour.
Mhm.
As Sarah mentioned, second time on the tour, and we hinted at this earlier, there were some inconsistencies in the story that we heard this time
Mhm.
compared to last. Now, this resonated with Sarah, and she's not on a lot. Sarah, you don't make an appearance too much on our edited ghost hunting videos because you're usually off, doing your thing or
Mhm.
taking a snooze. But you're brilliant, and people may
In the middle
not.
of the night, yes, I'm
But
sleeping.
no, in all seriousness here, you're brilliant, and people I don't think see that on our edited videos. Now, your memory, you recall these facts
Mhm.
from the tour nearly a decade ago, and immediately we started having a conversation about this
Mhm.
when we ended. And for me, hearing inconsistencies with story, that's what I do as a day job, is listen to people. And so
Yeah.
when I hear that, it makes me ask questions. And you and I started asking the same questions. Why?
Yeah.
Why are there inconsistencies? Is it the difference in tour guide?
Mhm.
Or is it maybe the story's not accurate?
And can we back up just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Because I teased it and I should probably discuss it. So at the end of both of the tours, this was one thing that did match up. They brought us to the living room. They showed us the 13 light globe chandelier. And then they said that there's a door in the room that's closed. And they said behind that door is a safe. And inside that safe is another safe. And when Sarah died, it had to be pried open because no one knew the combination, ostensibly. And inside was the obituary of her husband, the obituary of the baby, and a lock of the baby's hair.
Yeah, you mentioned no living children. She had a child that died shortly after.
Yeah, Annie.
childbirth. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So
Okay.
they both of the tour guides said the woman had the most money of anyone in the whole world, and those were the things that were the most important to her. And that struck me, and I think it struck you the first time we heard it, as that this is not a crazy person. This was a very lonely woman.
Yeah. I want to be careful with the way that we use crazy here.
Right.
But
But I think that was the idea, right? That's
how
the
it was
idea behind
portrayed
right.
the first time, it really was
Mhm.
that why would she do this? She
Right.
built 13 steps to nowhere and all these things that, we've said.
Yeah.
It really did come off when we walked out of there the first time.
Mhm.
I said to you, it really sounds like she's paranoid or has schizophrenia. And I felt bad for her for what I was certain was her mental health disease.
Mhm.
But it's not odd, but it did deviate slightly that what was in that safe was said twice, and it just didn't fit
Mhm.
with someone who spent their entire life evading something.
Right.
So I agree with you, and that's notable. And
Mhm.
again, that piece, in addition to the inconsistencies, is what got us asking questions.
Right.
This is a good core principle for the paranormal here, ladies and gentlemen. It's okay to question things.
Yeah.
And I think you should always question things, and especially the content that you view or consume, or when you go out and do your own investigations.
Yeah.
It's important to ask questions and not just take things at face value because they've been said to you.
Right.
And so now, should we tell people about the real Sarah Winchester?
I think it might just be to go over the inconsistencies on the house and then do.
I like it.
Okay.
So why don't you lead it?
Okay. So when Sarah, who was actually known to her friends and family as Sally, so I'm going to try and remember to call her Sally from here on out. In the tour, they always call her Sarah. From what I can tell, she was not called that in her life. So Sally purchased, well, so first Sally went out to California because of the, as we mentioned, the rheumatoid arthritis. Her physician, her family physician said, And I guess this might be jumping around a little bit, but I'm just going to open with.
It's okay. I'm trying to hang in there with you.
Yeah. So she was an American heiress with crappy luck. Am I allowed to swear? Shitty luck?
Yeah.
Okay. So she got her wealth from her husband, William Winchester, which we discussed earlier.
Right.
There was the baby, Annie. She suffered from marasmus, which I think, based on what I looked at, is just failure to thrive.
Yeah. It's usually malnutrition based.
And she died within a month of her birth, although some reports show 40 days. So I don't know. William and Sally had no other living children, although I did find I don't know what to call this. So it was an interview in 1971 done by, I'm not sure, it was like the Orange County Register or like perhaps
If you're not sure, that's okay.
Yeah,
Just
but it
leave
was
out.
1971 and it was typed out. So it was obviously like a spoken, interview. It wasn't like an email because it was 1971. Anyway, where the woman that they were interviewing said that it seemed to be common knowledge that she had 3 miscarriages as well. So,
Okay.
Anyway, she suffered from rheumatoid arthritis after the death of her husband, father, mother-in-law. Her parents had both died. Her physician recommended drier and warmer climate for her worsening rheumatoid arthritis. And so she decided to move to California, which was touted as the time as a place with good climate, soil, and relatively cheap land for sale, as well as she and her husband had gone to San Francisco several times and they had enjoyed it there. So that to me is why she moved out there. Just there's no evidence that she saw a medium. And
so you're talking about the inconsistencies of the story of the tour guide compared to what you found. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. I'm with you.
Just to lead that into. So just for comparison. So when she bought the property, she called it Llanada Villa, based off of a place in Spain where she had gone with her husband and they had a good time. She thought it reminded her of that climate, that beauty. So the house when she lived there was called Llanada Villa. Her interest, so this is to answer the crazy maze structure of the house.
Here we go.
Her interest in architecture was evidenced by her subscription to journals, including Architectural Record. Winchester's autobiographer supposes that she chose to run the construction project herself, seeking the advice of carpenters she hired. She trusted her employees. She also had mentioned multiple times in letters to friends and family that had it been possible, she would have liked to have been an architect.
So you're saying no evidence that the spirits were guiding her.
No.
No evidence that she met with the psychic.
Right.
And told her to do this.
No, she moved to California because of rheumatoid arthritis.
And giving people a little peek behind the curtains here, Sarah and I were both conducting research separately, but the same day.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that we were both researching for this episode at the same time. And we started texting and both came across that. And that was like the first, oh boy moment.
Right.
Where we're like, this story is immediately fractured.
Sus, yeah. So Sally did all the drawings and design, but she didn't have an overall plan because she had no formal training.
You're saying she went by Sally?
She did, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. She worked room by room. If she was unhappy with the results, she would tear the section down to rebuild or abandon it for a while before returning to work on it again. And the result was a rambling maze. The San Jose Register mentioned in an article sometime in the late 1890s that the 7-story tower, she tore it down and rebuilt it 16 times.
Wow. Now, what about the baby steps, the little tiny steps that go to nowhere? Surely that was to confuse the spirits.
No. Well, so the miniature steps, all of those go somewhere. Those and the tour guide, the most recent tour guide, did discuss this. It was because of her rheumatoid arthritis. It was difficult for her to raise her legs more than an inch off the ground.
Right.
And so that was really just for her to be able to get up and down the stairs to a floor before she installed she had 3, but I believe she had 2 in the late 1890s. Elevators. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, the consistency with mentioning the arthritis was there in both of them.
Yes.
And I say mention on purpose because it wasn't the highlight.
No.
The highlight was the 13 and all the paranormal things about the house.
But my memory of the first tour was more that they were saying in her older age when she had arthritis because she lived to be 80 something. But this tour guide, I think, did a better job of saying, like, she had rheumatoid arthritis as early.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I'm just pointing out where you
Yeah.
said earlier you
Yeah.
were going with this. So
Yeah.
continue on, please.
So this was the thing that was kind of mind-blowing to me. The unusual design of the house was not uncommon at the time. Elizabeth Colt in Hartford constructed a home over many years that was described as rambling and asymmetrical. Homes being constructed in the San Francisco area, such as Haas Lilienthal, were described as crazy quilts being patched together. The house is Victorian with East Lake and stick design elements. So it's really not that crazy.
It's not that crazy.
But here's why I think the lore started. In the 1906 earthquake, damage included that of the 7-story tower, the 3rd and 4th floor additions, and most of the chimneys collapsed.
Yes.
The plaster, wood, and tile work were destroyed. Sally had the debris cleared away and the home made safe, but no further building occurred after 1906. This left the home with water pipes protruding, 2nd-story doors opening to nothing where balconies once were,
Mm-hmm.
and staircases going up to a ceiling where once another level existed. Only essential repairs were done to the home after the earthquake. Because she stopped construction on her home and did not rebuild, local newspapers, so this is something that people were aware of, local newspapers declared her a madwoman. The only construction that she did after 1906 was she added an elevator in 1916.
I also saw some things about the newspaper that essentially she didn't leave the house often, is what a reporter said about one of the newspaper posts. And so when she didn't, and they saw her building, said, well, this woman that we don't see must be mad. And people ran with it.
Yeah.
But not the case at all.
No. So the other thing is that, and I don't know, I probably did go into it in her history. So the number 13.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's where I was going to go next.
Yeah. So James Perkins, which was one of Sally's carpenters.
So wait, hold on. Let's pause for a second.
Okay.
The items of 13 do exist in the house.
Yes.
Those are very real.
Pointed out to us. Yes.
And very clearly pointed out to us.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that is important to note. But the origin of them,
yeah,
not from Sally.
Right. So James Perkins, who was one of her carpenters, said that all the elements regarding the number 13 were added after Winchester's death, some as late as 1929. There is one staircase in the house that has 47 staircases. One staircase has 13 steps, which was pointed out to us. There are 13 bathrooms out of 160 rooms, 40 bedrooms, and 6 kitchens. There is no indication in any correspondence or recollection from her employees, friends, or family that Sally had any predilection to the number 13.
Pretty wild. Pretty wild indeed.
Yeah.
And what about the seance room?
So the seance room, where did I put that? Well, off the top of my head.
Yeah, you know it.
It was a gardener's bedroom. It was not a seance room.
It does have an odd way currently to get in and out. And they do make it a highlight of the tour. You know,
Right.
They have a little kid who wants to be the first one to go in when you can't get back out.
Yeah.
There is no evidence that she held seances in there. In fact, the reports that I even saw said, hey, like she's even against seances, which were somewhat common during her era.
Yes. Well, also, and I might have this written down later on, but seances were something that you did with a party. So it was like a parlor trick. You would have a party, you would have friends over, and you would hold a seance. You would have like a medium or someone come. So it is unlikely, in fact, almost impossible to believe that a woman at that time would be holding seances in the middle of the night by herself in a room and ringing bells at midnight and 2 a.m. To alert the spirits that she was starting and stopping. It's just not anything that, I mean, obviously people can come up with whatever they want to do.
Sure.
But it doesn't seem at all possible, nor are there any mentions in any correspondence or any of her employees verifying that any of that ever took place. In fact, several of her friends and employees said were very upset when that was kind of going around. that she was not like that.
Now, I've got a photo of the seance room here pulled up, and it
Mhm.
doesn't really do it justice because I guess in one regard, it's just a room
Right.
and it has some odd doors to it, just like the rest of the house does.
Right.
But when you hear people talk about it, you go online, it's all the hype of a seance room.
Right.
People can see here, it's a room.
It's a room.
It's simply a room.
And the closest room to it, what was the next stop? Do you recall?
Oh, I love it when you do this. No, I have no idea. I don't remember what I ate for lunch
The
today.
interior greenhouse
Okay.
for gardener.
For a gardener. I got there.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't line up with being a spooky seance-y room.
No.
Not at all.
No.
Now, what about the reports of hauntings? Like common knowledge, if we go ask people on the street, they say, oh yeah, Sarah Winchester haunts the Winchester Mansion.
Yeah. But even our tour guide said, no, no one who works here has ever said that she is here. But there are reports of employees that they don't know the names of.
Yeah.
And they've, had experiences or had things. And even when you go online to like Reddit or other articles, depends on which tour guide you speak with. Some people say, no, I've never had an experience. And some people say, yes, I have.
Right. Let me see if I can pull up one of those photos as well, because they did show us this photo. And in the basement is where this person is supposed to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this isn't a good enough photo. Let me see. Let me check one more spot. Please hold. Now, one interesting thing that made me laugh is we were talking about the spirits afterwards. Your sister was there.
Yeah.
And she really was digging one of these guys. Do you remember that?
Yes, but I mean, he's been dead for a long time, I assume.
Sarah, this is called a pad.
Okay.
I'm trying to get you to pad for me.
I'm sorry. Well, yes, she found one of them to be attractive and wanted to know why he wasn't the one haunting the house.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got a very small photo pulled up here of the gardeners. One of the guys is supposed to be down there, the wheelbarrow man pushing a wheelbarrow around. That's supposed to be him.
Yeah.
But otherwise, our tour guide said, she did have one experience.
Yes.
If you recall, she thought that one early morning when she was roaming the house,
yes.
they said as an early tour guide, they have to get to know the house. So they just let them loose inside of there when no one else is there.
Yeah.
She saw what looked to be a white skirt turning a corner.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And all the tour guides wore black.
Yes.
So she thought that was kind of interesting. She went and looked around and no one was there. But out of all the tours she's done, that was it.
Yes. And I have some photos that I kept on my computer, which is not at all useful to you, but I could airdrop them to you. This is a picture of the house when it had 7 stories.
Okay.
I can send that if you want to.
Yeah, we can give that a try. Why not do it live? I like it.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. So as Sarah's thumbing through that, I think the gist of this story, and then I want to talk more about Sarah Winchester is just, we'll call
Sally.
her. I know it's Sally, but
Okay.
people know her as Sarah for the purpose of this episode. Incredible person and employer, but the house as a whole, in summary for what we've just said,
Mm-hmm.
the seance room, the seances are bogus. The building to evade spirits, there's no evidence of.
Right.
The number 13 that she consistently told her architects to build, nope.
No.
Wasn't even instilled by her.
No.
Installed by her. And none of this, thank you for the correction, none of this lines up with the lore at all.
No.
And there's been no reports that she even haunts this place.
Right. But I think the most damning of evidence to me, because it's mentioned 2 times and it's kind of a feature, the 1906 earthquake story. It is unknown if Sally was at Yanata Villa during the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Just prior to the earthquake, based on letters to her lawyer, she was at her home in Atherton. According to the Winchester Mystery House's own website, Sally installed an annunciator to the home in 1890, which was a common early version of the intercom. That would have been 16 years prior to the earthquake, making the story of Sally being trapped for hours in a room, unable to reach her staff, a little sus.
Yeah, it would indeed.
There is no evidence that Sally slept in different rooms every night. It is more likely that she had a room or a suite very close to where Marion's room was. And the reason that Marion's room is still there is because Sally stopped working on the house after 1906. Marion was married and had a house in Atherton that Sally bought for them.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Marion, I don't know if we discussed this.
You did not?
Okay. Marion or Mary or Daisy was Sally's niece and was her personal assistant / secretary for a time. And a very close friend of hers. She would, after Sally stopped going out in public, Marion or Daisy would go and make inquiries or shopping, things like that for Sally.
Okay. Yeah. Well, before we go more into truly who Sally was and try to rewrite her history, anything else that you want to talk about as far as debunking the paranormal, spiritual side of this or any of the claims?
I mean, that's what I put in my rushed together documentation. I don't recall anything offhand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why was your documentation rushed?
Because I was copying over to the outline that you had, and I was trying to make, usually what I do when I'm putting these types of things together is I find articles that are, I don't know what the correct word is, authentic or
Okay.
reputable.
Yeah.
And then I take paragraphs and try to put the link so that I can get back to them of stuff that I want to talk about.
Okay.
And then I just kind of put them all down on a note. And then I try to make sense of them, which is what I was doing. And I ran out of time.
Okay. So why don't you tell us about Sally?
Okay. So we discussed about her being an American heiress, the rheumatoid arthritis. So
Talk about her as an employer. Let's
Okay.
start there.
She was a progressive and very kind employer. She hired people of all ethnicities for twice the going rate, if not more, and provided free homes for her workers' families.
And that was very briefly mentioned, but consistent in the 2 tours that we took.
Yes. She also fed her employees and their families twice a day, lunch and dinner, which was the actual purpose of the bell tower.
Right. Right. Let them know when it's time to get food.
Yep. When it's time to take a break, when it's time for work to be over. After dear employee's sudden death, I think it was her driver, Sally purchased a home for and continued to financially support his wife and children.
Wow. Now, let's, as a brief aside here, because this will matter with her history, the amount of money that she was still getting from the Winchester fortune was incredible.
Yeah. So when she moved out to California, I think the estimates were that she had about $1,000 a day, and that's not in today's money. Most of her money was in stocks at the time of her husband's death.
Okay.
She was very financially savvy, and at one point she was making about $25,000 a day.
Whew.
And that's
a lot of money.
That's not in today's money.
A lot of money.
Yeah. So she, let's see. Her employees were incredibly loyal. Many of them named children after her.
Wow. That's saying something.
Yeah. And the most plausible theory for why she kept building at Yanata Villa was to keep her workers employed. And she kept the house staffed and open for the same reason. And the only other reason was towards the end of her life. That was where her doctor lived.
Now, hold on. You rushed over this. This
Okay.
is so big.
Mhm.
The biggest piece of the story of Sarah Winchester is she continued to build till the day she died to evade the spirits.
Right.
Sally
Yes.
built to keep people employed.
Yeah. I mean, you can see them when you go on the tour. Several of the buildings were torn down because it was at one point 165 acres and her employees had houses on the property. They've been torn down, so you can't see them. But there are, I believe, 2 houses that you can't go into. They're condemned, but that belong to employees that are closer to the property and still remain. That's where those employees lived. That was where she had land for them to build houses and keep their families. So she kept them working, kept paying them.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible.
They became part of her family.
Yeah. All right. Anything else
Um,
you want to say about her?
Yeah. So she was also a mostly anonymous philanthropist. The only donations that she made were known by her lawyer and discovered after her death from letters and ledgers. She was paying a member of a local. She was a paying member of the local chapter of the Red Cross, which was very new at the time. Sally donated $150 to the in that day's money to the San Jose Relief Fund after the 1906 earthquake. She supported the Save the Redwoods campaign by donating $500. Her largest donations were to the tubercular ward in New Haven. That's what her husband died of, tuberculosis.
Right.
Initially, she donated $300,000 anonymously, and then over a 10-year period, she donated another $1 million, and that was in those days' money, to the hospital, which opened on April 4th, 1918, as the William Wirt Winchester Hospital. The hospital has since become part of the Yale School of Medicine.
Oh, how about that?
Because most were unaware of her philanthropy, the press and those who did not know her viewed her as miserly. And so she was not a mad woman, and she was not a spiritualist based on people who knew her. Testimonies and records from those who knew her described her as intelligent, kind, savvy, a savvy financial manager, not superstitious, and remained sharp-witted even into her old age. No mention of any correspondence that she held seances, and as popular as they were at the time, seances were done in groups. Therefore, it is unlikely that she would have held seances alone in the middle of the night. Wow. And then the last thing that is never discussed, except it was brought up briefly, about the houseboat. Sally purchased several properties in the Bay Area for family members and for herself.
Yeah.
She was not living in Yanata Villa in 1906. She, like I said, kept the house open, kept it staffed, and would stay there from time to time to see her doctor. However, these are just excerpts from a long list. In 1903, Winchester purchased several properties in Atherton, one of which was purchased for the Marriotts. That's her niece, Marion, who married a Marriott, not any relation to the Marriott chain of hotels. And for them to live in. In 1904, Sally purchased land in San Francisco Bay Area near Burlingame. I don't know how to say that. It looks like it's in between.
We should work it out right now.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Continue.
After Sally commissioned the construction of an ark or a houseboat, which was a trend at the time to be docked at that property. It is also said that it was rumored that she built the boathouse after the earthquake because she thought that flood was coming, an end of time biblical flood.
Oh,
However,
wow. I don't remember that.
It wasn't discussed on this tour.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's
It
interesting.
wasn't discussed on this tour, but she built the houseboat 2 years prior to the earthquake. In 1907, Sally purchased a two-door style home in Burlingame Park, where she stayed while overseeing the dredging of a canal for her houseboat. She had it moved. The houseboat remained unscathed after the San Francisco earthquake. Winchester and her niece and her husband lived in the houseboat while repairs were made to each of their properties.
Okay.
So I think
I'm following you.
The Atherton homes were damaged which was closer to San Francisco.
Talk about how afterwards she didn't live in the home after the earthquake.
Yeah, well, I don't think she was in the home during the earthquake, and she was living in her Atherton property.
The common tour story is that she returned after a year of being away from the home to continue building.
Yes.
And that is not true.
No, that's not true. No, she had the debris cleared away. She had the house made fit for living. She did not ever close off any segments of the house.
Yeah.
But she just kept the house available and staffed to keep people employed. But she diverted some of her workers to other homes or other properties and just stopped working on it because it had become.
So let's transition this slightly.
Yeah.
So we have this lore that has been debunked.
Mm-hmm.
How did we get from lore to where we are now and the story that is told?
Well,
The house sold. Let
Yeah.
me tee it up just in case.
Okay. I know where you're going.
Okay, perfect. So the house sold in this part. If you haven't been blown away by this info yet,
Yeah.
This will get you.
So in 1922, everything was left to employees and her niece. The house was basically said to be useless and wasn't worth anything, but the land was. So let's call it a roller coaster tycoon. I don't know what else to call him. His name was John H. Brown.
Okay.
Leased from I don't know who purchased it, but then bought it by the end of 1923. And so within 6 months of Sarah's death, it was being marketed as the Winchester Mystery House. And people could go through and tour it to see all the craziness. And as early as before Sally's death, newspaper were printing stories about the crazy mad woman, that she thought ghosts were coming after her. So they really leaned into the story and created situations like the 13 hooks, the 13 globed chandelier. And despite protests from family members, people who knew her, workers saying this, none of this is true, the stories just grew wilder and wilder. And it has been a privately owned residence, even though it has historic value, even though they don't mention this, still owned by the Brown family, relatives of the original purchaser.
Yeah.
And when you are going on tours, when you are giving money to the Winchester house, it's going to the Brown family to continue telling made up lies and stories about Sally Winchester.
Let that sink in. That is just beyond wild.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we have been told in pop culture and lore is a lie. And not only that, they're covering up some of the great qualities of this woman,
Well,
which really should be celebrated.
right.
Not covering up, but they're
are.
not promoting it.
Well, because I mean, I even read a thing on Reddit from a past tour guide who made the claim that, we tried to start telling the truth, but people don't want to hear it. Cool story, bro.
And if I'm someone who's looking to make money off of this house, I do exactly what they do.
Right.
You go in, you put some odd things about it, you come up with stories that
you point out the oddities that do exist.
You do. And then you add to it.
Right.
And then you market it. And you end up 100 years later where we are today.
But I mean, exactly, because how do you start a tour with, all right, here's the weird stuff. And it's because in 1906, there was a massive earthquake. And instead of rebuilding what had taken 26 years to do,
right,
Sally wasn't living here anymore. And there was still usable parts of the house. So they covered them over and moved on with their lives. And I mean, that to me is way more sane than, well, better build it back up.
It's so unfortunate.
I mean, can you imagine how much time and effort and energy went into doing all of that work for not just her, but her employees?
Yeah.
To then turn around and say, well, let's do it all again.
Yep. It's just fascinating. The whole part about it is fascinating. As far as the paranormal reports on the Winchester website. Let me see if I can pull this up for those watching. I started looking into, I wanted to find the article that talked about the top 10 houses or haunted places in America.
Oh, yeah.
Because we went down to San Diego. We checked out Whaley Mansion because that was on there. And that was an interesting place.
The Time.
It was the Time Magazine article. And as I try to find this, I'm trying to pull it up on the website right now, and I just don't see it on the Winchester Mansion website where it talks about this. But nonetheless, when I Googled Time Magazine list of top 10 most haunted houses in America, I found a list. That house ain't on there.
No.
mean, what are we doing?
Lying.
What are we doing?
Lying.
And hundreds of people go through this place every day.
Yep.
And I don't want to tell people to not go tour it. But when you tour this house, you should think about the story that Sarah gave you about Sally
Yeah.
Winchester and not these wild reports of a mad woman.
Well, or I mean, I don't feel bad knowing that it's a private property and that you're paying money to a private entity. Our tour guide was even saying that, oh, your tickets make it possible for us to do renovations to that. How much money has the Brown family made off of peddling lies about Sally Winchester? And they've just renovated 2 dining rooms?
You're coming out with the flamethrower.
Well, fuck them.
And now Sarah's not invited back on the show. So we can't say that on the show, but yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
I think this was an intelligent, wealthy woman who was lonely and who took very good care of the people around her. And they made up stories about her, and they make up stories about her to make money, to make profit. Because a very easy explanation, there was an earthquake and she didn't rebuild.
Yeah. Well, fascinating history. Sarah, before we end here, anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I'm going to add the F word again. No, she bought the house in 1886. I think I said 1866 earlier. What was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh, the interesting article that I found, because I was trying to find the address of the house she was living in when she did pass away. Just to be clear, she did pass away at Yanata Villa. She had gone there to see her doctor 5 days prior, and she passed away in the house, but she was not living there.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to find good information about Sally because so much of the website, the Winchester, whatever, Mystery House website, kind of,
which I'll pull up now for people to see,
takes over. But I think if I were her, I'd be mad and I would haunt the place, but she doesn't. So she must be way more forgiving than I am.
Certainly a fascinating home. For me, a little piece of me dies when such great paranormal lore is completely debunked. I can't think of another instance where something like this has happened. Ghost hunters on their early days debunked a famous haunted house somewhere. It doesn't matter where, but the point was someone was fabricating evidence of a very well-known haunted location. And that stands out to me as, taking a little bite out of, hey, I want this to be real. I want this mystery to be there. And with this place, it's just not.
No. There are multiple reasons why this place could be haunted. There were a lot of people who lived there. People make up lies about Sally Winchester, and I'd be mad, but I just don't think it's haunted.
Yeah.
I think it's just a really massive property.
Yeah. If anything, like you said, the workers who may have loved Sally and put their heart and soul into building the place, sure. That makes far more sense than some made up tales.
Right.
About
a crazy
Sarah
woman.
Sally Winchester.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, good job. Well done. I'm going to go edit the bleep. I'm going to have to go put in a beep, but otherwise, well done. We're going to do another one of these?
Sure.
All right. Our goal with these, honestly, find locations that we've been to, break them down a little bit, and even places that we investigate, maybe provide a little bit of insight behind the episodes that we edit and produce for you to consume, give a little bit of behind the scenes details. Sarah can provide some history of them as well. And yeah, any parting words? Oh, we should have planned a sign off. You're creative. Why don't you come up with a sign off right now?
Remember Sally Winchester. Sarah Winchester's made up.
And that will be our sign off for every episode from here on out. I love it. Like, subscribe, share with a friend. Honestly, if you did like it, we really appreciate it. Leave a comment below. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and tell us where you would like us to research next. Good work. We should have cheersed at the start.
Now we're cheersing.
Now we're cheersing. Cheers.
Well, I'm empty.
We can go fix that.
Okay.